You have your first job as a data analyst. Well done. Congratulations. Welcome to the data nerds. How do you be a good one? You have all these skills in Excel, Python, SQL. How do you actually progress your career to the next level by being a good data analyst? Well, probably the most important thing to being a good data analyst is good stakeholder management. Now, stereotypically, data analysts don't tend to be the most communicative. I'm still working on it. Stakeholders are the people that ask you the questions that they want to know the answer to, that will drive some business change or some insight. For example, you've been asked by Kathleen Kennedy. You work for Disney, let's just go with it. She wants to know how many people viewed Star Wars The Acolyte Season 1. Okay, so Kathleen sends you an email saying, I'd like to know the viewers of Star Wars The Acolyte Season 1, please. And you go, alright, okay. So stakeholders don't always necessarily know what they want. So it's your job as a data analyst to contact them as soon as possible. And usually the best way is to get a call, because questions can be misconstrued through an email or a Teams message. It's probably a good idea to have looked at the data that you can source first before going into that call, so that you know, is it possible or isn't it possible to get viewership over season 1? There might already be some existing data, so you can pretty much just send her existing data, and that's the stakeholder managed. So in that call, you're going to be discussing how long it's going to take you to get the data. I would always overestimate how long it's going to take. So for example, you think it's going to take a week, I'd say it takes 2 weeks. You never know what data problems you're going to run into. You don't know what other higher priority tasks you're going to get given. Double the time what it takes. If it takes a day, then give it 2 days, because you'll be ironing out some problems. From experience, you will always run into problems, no matter how good you think it is. Okay, so now you're working on the project. You've gone away after this call with a stakeholder. They're happy with what you're going to do. You're happy with what you're looking for. And then you run into like a little bit of an error. You notice something that could change how the insights look. It's very good practice to have frequent communication with the stakeholder and let them know how is it going. If you let them know in advance, you're more likely to have their input and save a lot of time of you digging around with data that you probably don't even understand, let's be honest. And they can also provide a lot of insight to you. Data analysts don't tend to specialize on one data set. You'll be thrown into a new data set. The stakeholder tends to be the expert in the area, but you're the expert technical data person. So it's almost like a frequent communication between their experience in the subject and your technical ability in handling data. Those two together are what makes a good insight. So this would be probably setting up a call or just blipping them a Teams message saying, hey, I found this error. We don't actually have viewership numbers for Australia. Does this affect your insight? And she'll be like, yeah, it does actually. Or no, it doesn't, but we're aware of that problem already, and in other projects we kind of just exclude Australia. That's just an example. I'm sure Australia can watch The Acolyte, but if they didn't, then it's probably a blessing. Another really key thing is, if you ever run into a problem, always be comfortable asking for time. Never put out bad data that you know is wrong. Just ask for a little bit more time to check through. Just say you've run into a problem. I want to be confident that the data that I'm sending you is correct. Communicate early, communicate often, be upfront and honest about how it's going. The second thing that makes you a good data analyst, this one's a bit more technical. So this is about how you validate your data. And it kind of links to the point before about you shouldn't really put data out that's wrong. So whenever you get a project, you should always look into understanding the data as much as possible, because this will help you down the line when you come to have further questions from the stakeholder. It also makes it a lot easier to debug the data you're working with when you actually understand what's going on. There's no viewership in Australia, and you spot that in the data, your first thing is to be, is that correct? Is that really right? Is there no viewership in Australia? So you have to go to other sources like your stakeholder and ask, do we have any viewers in Australia? Do we let Australians watch The Acolyte? So when you're validating your data, what you should have in your head is aim for near perfection, but know that you're never going to have the data 100% correct, because that's just the nature of data. So this actually depends on whether you're doing regulatory work where it has to be perfect, or analytical work where you only need 80% of the trends, as in you only need to put 20% of the effort in to get 80% of the work back, and that's for analytics. So I just need to know rough numbers. Has it gone up? Has it gone down each month in viewership? Aim for near perfection, but know that data will always have mistakes. And then on to number 3, which sets aside the good from the bad and the ugly, is making your reports nice to look at, and also thinking about the end user. With our Kathleen Kennedy Acolyte example, let's say it's a lot more complicated, and the data that I send her, she doesn't really understand. She's not very data technical. So if I sent her all the raw data for viewership history by gender, by region, she probably wouldn't be able to get the insights out from that because she's not trained in data. And the best way to do this generally is with UI design. When I was learning to be a data analyst, I was building websites and I got into a lot of UI design and UX, and that was thinking about the end user. And that's really helped me because I'm always thinking about how does the stakeholder who doesn't really have any data technicality understand what I'm trying to say from a few graphs and things. So they need to be able to filter and slice the data. So I'll put in some slices and some buttons that will really be nice and big and saying, oh, if you press this, it will filter by gender. So instead of giving the stakeholder a massive table full of data, you condense just the parts they want to see. So before you send your final data to your stakeholder and never talk to them again, then it's a good idea to give them a draft first. And this is just so that you can show them where you got to and if there are any amendments, because stakeholders always have amendments. They'll always change something. Could you just change the split from gender to height? Something that you weren't ever expecting, then you'll be in a much better place to give a final report to them. Being a good data analyst is building rapport with your stakeholders, really. It's being able to get good feedback from your stakeholders, saying, yes, they did a really good job. It goes around the business, instead of a bad data analyst where a stakeholder will say, yeah, they sent me some really bad data. I couldn't use it. They didn't really think about how I wanted to use it. They just sent me a load of rubbish, basically, and I had to go back to them. I had to chase them. That sounds like a really bad data analyst. So basically, just be the opposite of that. Is there anything else I want to add? Oh, another really good tip, just a bonus tip at the end. If you write code to get data, and you export that data, take the code, copy and paste it into whatever report you just made, because no doubt that report will come back to you in about 6 months, and then you'll be like, oh, how did I code this? Oh, I didn't think I needed to do this again. So always copy and paste the code into a hidden Excel sheet and just hide it in the background when you send the report out, because you'll thank yourself so much in the future. So yeah, those are the 3 main things that make a good data analyst, and that's what I've learned from experience. I hope this was useful to you, and you're all aware that The Acolyte Season 2 hasn't been renewed. See you in the next one. Peace.